Anthony on paper Smith takes on Johnny the Inflatable Balloon Walker. We're a few days away from this fight, and we know where both of these men have weaknesses. For Johnny Walker, I'm sure that he could put out a fully grown male elephant if he landed the right shot. He's a freak athlete, an absolute specimen. I've seen a video of him deadlifting like 660 pounds, but I also know that if I were to blink in front of him, he'd probably get knocked out cold. A gust of wind is all it takes when you're fighting this man. But Anthony Smith, on the other hand, he's a Nebraskan brawler. And I understand he thinks he's Einstein out there, but he has a lot of experience. Even when he fought John Jones, which was years ago, he had more experience in the cage than John Jones. And he's a veteran, and he's also tough as nails. That's another thing that I want to say about Anthony Smith. And you know what, guys? I think that Anthony Smith is going to submit Johnny Walker in the first round. But before I break that down, I think it's really important to get into the mentalities of both of these men. Now, when it comes to the mental battle, Anthony Smith's got the cozy head. You can get in there rent-free. Johnny Walker, he's just showing up for a good time, man. He lets it all roll off his shoulder. If he takes 5 KO losses in a row, he's set for life. 6'6", freak athlete, could probably go pro in any other sport that he chooses. And he's just showing up to have a good time. He just wants to dance. He wants to party. He wants to fucking throw a flying elbow, you know? Anthony Smith, he looks like your local Nebraskan tractor driver that goes down to the strip club to fight over $13 in a grape soda. Anthony Smith's looking rough, man. And Anthony Smith, he's ranked number 5 in the world right now, but even he knows that he's on thin ice. Because, let's be honest, that's his mountain peak in the light heavyweight division. He's not good enough to get further than the number 5 spot, but he's also not bad enough to be outside of the top 10. He's in the middle, and that's just kind of how he's cruising throughout his career. He's a win 2, lose 1 kind of guy, and I honestly think that he knows that deep down inside, and that might be why he gets into all of these fake beefs. That's probably why he tries to get himself pissed off at his opponents, because he feels like he needs to feel better about where he stands in his career. And I've heard him on the Michael Bisping podcast talking about how Johnny Walker has been disrespectful leading up to the fight, even though the only thing Johnny Walker has said leading up to this is that he wants to eat the Lionheart, which is Anthony Smith's nickname. And if anything, that's just a really light jab. That's a respectful poke at Anthony Smith in a competitive way. If anything, as I said, he's giving you clout, bro. It's not in any way disrespectful, but Smith is always going to whine.
I'm curious if you were aware that Anthony was not answering any questions about you leading up to the fight. He didn't want to talk about you at all. He just wanted to talk about himself. What did you know about that, and what do you make of that?
I don't know if he like me, if he hate me. I don't hate him. I have nothing against nobody. I don't know why. I did nothing to him, you know?
Oh, maybe me and Anthony have beer after. Maybe we hug and we dance, Now, Johnny Walker is this friendly giant. He's always in a good mood. He's having a great time. He comes out to his fights dancing on the walkout. He's smiling. And of course, Anthony Smith's the kind of guy to create some big fake beef in his head against the nicest man in the UFC. Mike, don't get me wrong. I love the team. I love John Kavanaugh and everything that those guys do. You have Johnny Walker talking shit, saying he's going to beat me. You want to hit me? You want to hit me? Who are you to think you don't even know my name yet? It's clear to me that when it comes to the mentality, I do like Johnny Walker because he just seems to be in a better place. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy that gets too discouraged by a loss. He can take it. He'll let it, roll off of his back. Whereas Anthony Smith, that those losses kind of eat away at him. And he knows that if he loses to Johnny Walker, his hopes and dreams of ever being a champion are completely done. But here's the thing about Walker. I am not that impressed by his wins. Now, don't get me wrong, those knockouts that he had early on in the UFC, like the Shirkinov KO and the Khalil Roundtree knockout, those are incredible. But these are lower levels of competition. And let's not forget that Johnny Walker is getting badly hurt in a lot of these fights. And the fights in which he is winning are over guys that are either one-dimensional or Ion Cutelaba, who doesn't have a lot in between the ears. Let's be honest with Ion Cutelaba. I mean, he took Johnny Walker down, had his back, or was on top of him, And of course, Johnny Walker's pretty solid down there, but nonetheless, he fumbled the bag and allowed Johnny Walker to reverse the position. As I said, not the sharpest knife in the drawer, Mr. Ion Cutelaba. He's a savage, but we can at least admit that he's not the smartest man. And then again, you're talking about the KO over Paul Craig. Paul Craig is a one-dimensional jiu-jitsu grappler in the UFC. Now, don't get me wrong, he's phenomenal when it comes to finding submissions on the ground. He's one of the most dangerous men in the UFC when it hits the mat, but his striking is piss poor. He doesn't have a good chin like Anthony Smith. He gets rocked all the time. He's been finished before. And the way he got finished was by grabbing a single leg of Johnny Walker. He gets hit with a flush right hand. It caught him off guard. It definitely rocked him, but then Johnny Walker hits him with a big elbow, another right hand, and then smashes him with like a hammer fist on the feet. And instead of like letting go of the leg and resetting, Paul Craig continues to hold on to the leg, and Johnny Walker just rains down on him while he's gripping his leg with these big hammer fists. And I understand Craig was rocked and he wasn't in his right mind to make a better decision. But nonetheless, I don't see this happening with a guy like Anthony Smith. Anthony Smith is so much more well-rounded than both of these guys. And I want to talk about Johnny Walker's recent wins because I honestly think he's taken a step down in competition, and that's why he's able to look like he's having a resurgence. But remember, he got a win over Ryan Spann, and this was in 2020. This was before the Thiago Santos loss. This was before the Jamal Hill loss, where he got turned into a meme, where he became the inflatable balloon. In the Ryan Spann fight, he got the KO, but that was from hitting Ryan Spann with about 30 back of the head shots, illegal strikes that the ref just somehow didn't call. He got dropped badly in the first round. Spann drops Johnny Walker badly and just starts to grapple with him. Johnny Walker works his way to the fence. Ryan Spann takes him down up against the fence, and then Johnny Walker stands back up and hits Ryan Spann with a hammer fist, or I think it was an elbow, the first thing that hurt him, and it rocks Ryan Spann. That may have been a clean shot, but after that, Johnny Walker just starts raining down back fists on the back of Ryan Spann's head. And of course, if you're that big and powerful and you land 30 of those, the guy's going to go out. I don't really view that as the best win. And I also don't think Anthony Smith is dumb enough to get in one of those positions. Now, I understand I shit on Anthony Smith sometimes, but again, he is a veteran and he is smart in the cage. And the way he took Ryan Spann out, he just outsmarted him on the feet, dropped him twice in that fight. A lot of us forget that. The first time with the left hook, he countered Ryan Spann. And the second time with the right hand, he dropped him, jumped on him, and submitted him. And I think that Anthony Smith is one of those guys that has a little bit of an underrated striking game. He beat the shit out of Glover Teixeira, and I understand Glover gets his ass kicked a lot, but he looked to be really improved in that Glover fight. I believe that this was before he fought Alexander Rakic, maybe a win away from a title shot. He had just beat Alexander Gustafsson. He was whooping on Glover. Now, the reason why he lost the Glover Teixeira fight, or the reason why he started to slow down, is because he threw the kitchen sink at Glover Teixeira. His coaches were in the corner yelling out different combinations every single second, and Anthony Smith just nonstop was chucking techniques out there, and he eventually gassed out. And we know Glover Teixeira is tough as nails and has one of the best chins. But Anthony Smith showed a lot of good weapons there. His jab is pretty clean. He's got a good right hand. And what I really like from him is that body kick. The front kick to the body is money for Anthony Smith. Now, can he throw that against Johnny Walker? I don't think that would be a wise move because it'll open him up to getting hit with something big or getting a kick caught and then getting taken down. But the thing is, Johnny Walker does his best work with his kicks. And I had mentioned this is one of Anthony Smith's weaknesses. He doesn't do a good job of taking leg kicks. This is how Alexander Rakic was able to take him out. Hit Anthony Smith with like 6 leg kicks and dropped Anthony Smith, and Smith just couldn't stand up for the rest of the fight. Magomed Ankalaev checked a lot of Anthony's kicks, and eventually Anthony Smith hurt his leg in that first round after getting a lot of those kicks checked. Let me just say, the reason why I don't think Anthony Smith had a lot of success with him is because he is one of the best defensively sound fighters in the UFC, in my opinion. But back to Johnny Walker, I see the way that he gets put out sometimes is when he's throwing a kick. He was throwing a kick against Ryan Spann, and Ryan Spann caught him. I believe that he threw a kick against Jamal Hill before he got knocked out. And I can see Anthony Smith timing one of those front kicks up the middle, leg kicks when Johnny Walker throws them, and I think he can time the left hook and put him out. And that's ultimately what I'm going to say. I think Anthony Smith is going to knock Johnny Walker down in the first round. I think he's going to jump on him and submit him when they're both relatively dry. Of course, Johnny Walker could put Anthony Smith's lights out, but again, this guy hasn't been KO'd at all in the UFC. He's gotten TKO'd on the ground when it was the 5th round against Glover Teixeira. He had gassed himself out and he had got dropped in the 4th. But other than that, he's been knocked out like cold once in his entire career. He's extremely tough, and he's taken big shots from really hard-hitting physical specimens like a Ryan Spann. Like Ryan Spann, I know he's not as much of a freak athlete as Johnny Walker, but he still is one of the biggest light heavyweights, one of the fastest, most powerful guys in that division. And Anthony weathered the storm, dropped him, and submitted him in the first round. That was a great win, and I understand that was a couple years ago, and he's older now, but I think that he's taking a step down in competition here against Johnny Walker. I really do. Johnny Walker is getting wins over Paul Craig, Ion Cutelaba. I mean, Ion Cutelaba was fighting for his career in his last fight. Ion Cutelaba was one fight away from getting cut. Anthony Smith is in a completely different position, and he only really loses to guys that have really good resumes. Let's look at Anthony Smith's losses. Magomed Ankalaev, that guy could go on to be a future defending champion in that division, and as I said, he is one of the most defensively sound fighters. And then he beat Ryan Spann, he beat Jimmy Crute, he beat Devin Clark. Alexander Rakic beat Anthony Smith. Again, the leg kicks are an issue. And I think that if Johnny Walker wants to win this fight, because I'll just get into how I think he can win, I think he should go at the legs and commit to a lot of leg kicks early. Because if I'm looking at tape on Anthony Smith, he doesn't really check a lot of leg kicks. And what he'll do is when he gets kicked to the leg, he likes to respond. He likes to get it back. And his leg kicks are not nearly as powerful as Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker looks like he can, jump through into outer space, jump through the atmosphere. His legs are that springy and explosive. And if he lands like 10 solid leg kicks on Anthony Smith, Smith might not be able to walk. And I also don't see Anthony Smith checking any of these. So that's what I think is Johnny Walker's path to victory. You kick his legs, you try to grapple with him when Anthony Smith no longer has his legs underneath him, and you just kind of use your size and athleticism to bully him on the ground. We know Anthony Smith always talks about how great his jiu-jitsu game is and how in a grappling match he would beat John Jones. He's delusional about that. Of course, every time we've seen Anthony Smith go to the ground when guys are just on top of him, he doesn't do well. Rakic destroyed him in their fight. Out-grappled him, fucked him up. Magomed Ankalaev TKO'd him on the ground. I understand Anthony Smith had hurt his leg, but that's my point. I think that's Johnny Walker's path to victory, other than getting a flying knee KO or, getting a clinch position and mashing Anthony Smith to the face with a hard elbow. If that doesn't happen, I don't think a solid right hand from Johnny Walker is going to put Smith out or a good timed hook. He doesn't have that kind of power when he's just kind of doing regular kickboxing. You know what I mean? But I'm continuing to look at Anthony Smith's resume. He lost to Thiago Santos. That was a body kick. He got knocked out with a body kick. Not knocked out, but it took the wind out of him, and he got TKO'd. Cesar Ferreira, we're going all the way back to the Ultimate Fighter. So he's only lost to Thiago Santos when Santos was a motherfucker. This is before John Jones. He lost to John Jones, of course. He lost to Glover Teixeira. Again, tough as nails. He gassed himself out, had a really bad approach in that fight. And Magomed Ankalaev. This is a step up in competition for Johnny Walker. I think Smith is going to drop him and submit him. That's my official prediction. I just feel like Johnny Walker is going to try to land something wild on Anthony Smith in the first round, or maybe try to take him down. I think, yes, he could take Anthony down early, but because Anthony will be fresh, because he won't be damaged, he'll be ready for it. And if Johnny Walker is just going to be kickboxing with Anthony Smith, I actually like Smith's chances. I think he'll be able to time a good counter left hook, a right hand. I just don't see Walker being able to take a good shot, to be honest. And yes, he's coming off of 2 good wins, but he hasn't got hit in these fights. So wait until he does get hit. And again, the last win before that, Ryan Spann, he got dropped badly and won it because he was landing a lot of back of the head shots. I think Anthony Smith catches him, drops him, and submits him. That's what I honestly think. I think he's going to get him out of there in the first round. I think Smith is going to get it. Until next time.